Today we've got another set of ComicLink auction data to look at, so let's go over some of those stats and look at some of the auction results. Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is New Compass Collectibles, where I talk about comic book data and auction results. Today we're talking about ComicLink auctions from June of 2024. The auction is actually still ongoing. This is their focused auction for the month of June. Session 1 and Session 2 is completed. That's where most of the big books are sold, so we're going to go over that data. Session 3 and Session 4, there's actually more sessions in this particular auction. There's some non-comic sales and original art going to be at the end of the auction, but most of the big comic books have already sold here in Session 1 and Session 2, so we're going to look at that auction data today. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of auction reviews and other data analysis related to comic books, and love to have you come back for future videos. Looking at Session 1 and Session 2 in the ComicLink auction, total sales so far have been close to 1.6 million. This is a little bit lower than some of the other auctions we've looked at because the other sessions haven't completed yet. Session 1A has the biggest sales, 172 sales in this auction for an average selling price of $3,626. Session 1B had 2,500 sales. Session 2 had 648 sales. That's Golden Age only. Surprising that the Session 2 average selling price was only $243. It's pretty low for Golden Age sales. We'll look at the top sales there, but it looks like not a lot of big sales in that auction this month. Looking at the sales by age, we have the most sales in Silver Age and Bronze Age coming in second place there. A good number of Golden Age books, but only 45 modern books, and that's because we're not looking at Session 3 and Session 4 results for this month. Most of the modern books are going to be in those later sessions, which are still ongoing. Only the high value modern books are included in the premier sessions, either Session 1A or they might have been in Session 1B. But the average selling price for those 45 books was $1,025. So not that many modern sales, but the ones that were sold were, high value items. So speaking of high value items, let's go ahead and just jump right into the top 5 sales of each age. I'm going to look at the top 5 sales in modern, bronze, silver, and golden age. And then at the end, I'll put them all into a table and we'll look at how those sales compare to previous sales. Just starting with the number 5 sale here in the modern age was Batman number 423. This is a signature series version of this 9.8, signed by Todd McFarlane. This was the 5th highest sale in the modern age, selling for $3,100. The 4th highest sale in the modern age was a Spawn number 1. So this is also a Todd McFarlane book, but this one is a 9.9. So that's interesting, selling for $3,500. We don't see those all the time. A 9.9. There are multiple 9.9s in Spawn number 1. Previous sales for this book, you can see here that $4,800 earlier this year, $3,720 also earlier this year. But the last sale was $1,676, so a huge drop off. And the other interesting thing about that, it was actually the same book that had sold in January. So in January, we had a sale from Heritage for $4,800 of this 9.9. And that book reappeared 2 months later, actually at Comic Connect. So different auction house, resold at Comic Connect for less than half the price, almost a third of the price. So this was a huge drop off for this book. And I'm not sure why it would be bought and then resold a couple months later. Maybe the original sale didn't actually go through, who knows? But it was recorded, so it seems legitimate. And but reselling for a huge loss just a couple months' time. Comparing that to the sale here on ComicLink, $3,500 is more in line with the earlier sales of this book. So that $1,600 price on Comic Connect seems like an outlier. Seems like the value is still holding around $3,500. The 3rd highest sale in the modern age, surprise, surprise, it's another Todd McFarlane book here. This is Amazing Spider-Man 300 and a 9.8. This one is signed, but it's actually signed by Stan Lee. So we have the Stan Lee signature right here on front. And the selling price for this one was $3,533. The most recent sale for that one actually was quite a bit higher at, I think it was over $8,000. It shows that this $8,000 sale in 2023 wasn't some huge outlier. This value of this book had been going up kind of steadily over the years. It was the highest sale. $8,000 was a new record, and that was in July of 2023. So it makes sense that prices have corrected a bit, but selling for just over $3,000, I mean, the 9.8 unsigned is a little bit under 3,000. So this is a pretty small premium for the Stan Lee signature compared to those previous sales. So a huge drop from 8,000 in 2023 to this $3,500 sale in June of this year. Second on the list for modern books in this auction, the second highest sale was a Wolverine Limited Series #1 9.9. Now it sold for $7,869. This price has been dropping quite a bit. We know that a lot of new 9.9s have been added to the census, around 10 or 11 of these that we know of so far, bringing the census total up to 39. So when you go from 29 to 39, that's a pretty big jump in the census. And we've seen prices go from around 15,000 to 11,000 and now under 8,000. So this was a weak sale here, and we'll see how prices continue to move as some of those other 9.9s hit the market. But the #1 sale for the modern age was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. When this does come up as a first print, it often is the #1 sale in the modern age. It is one of the most expensive books from that time period. And this one was an 8.5 selling for $12,850. Moving into the Bronze Age now, the fifth highest sale was a Giant Size X-Men 9.6, selling for $7,756. A high grade for this book, but we do see 9.8s come up pretty frequently. In fact, there was another one in this auction, which we'll get to later in this list. Incredible Hulk 181 in a 9.4 was our fourth highest sale in the Bronze Age. This one selling for $9,200, a pretty low selling price for this book. We've seen the price for this grade in this book get cut in about half, so losing about 50% of its value over the last couple of years since the peak in 2021, 2022. The third highest sale here in the Bronze Age was a 9.8 of Amazing Spider-Man #129, another book that we've seen drop off in value quite a bit since its peak, selling for $18,794 in this auction. And that's been a pretty typical price. We've seen it go a little lower, a little higher in other recent auctions. And as promised, here again is Giant Size X-Men #1, this time in a 9.8, selling for just over $20,000, $20,626. So this 9.8, again, has dropped quite a bit since the boom and its peak value in 2021, 2022. But has been selling for around this price for the recent months. So $20,000 is a reasonable price, based on today's market. Of course, we also had the Giant Size X-Men in a 9.9 sell in the last week at ComicConnect. That auction, it sold for $170,000. So a 9.8 selling for $20,000. The 9.9 selling for $170,000. That gives it an 8.5 multiplier, which for a book of this high of a value, an 8.5 multiplier is probably a little low, but not really an unreasonable expectation. So I don't think it was a failure of a sale. It's kind of hard to get like a 20 times multiplier on a $20,000 book to get a $400,000 value, which is what some people predicted. And I had a short that was saying based on the trends for 9.9 multipliers that 400,000 was possible. But for books of this price point, achieving a 20 times multiplier is certainly difficult. And so an 8.5 multiplier at a $170,000 sale is, I think, reasonable, especially given some of the questions about 9.9s in general. Will we see more 9.9s on the census? And the 9.9 for X #1, there were questions from some people about how good that grade was for this particular book. Did it really deserve it? But the final sale here in the Bronze Age was another 9.8, this time for a Batman 251. Now this is a book that we don't see come up as often. Actually, I have the census pulled up right here. CGC census for 9.8, there are 29 copies. So a fairly rare book in a 9.8, and this 9.8 sold for $38,000. I know some people don't like to see the white wrap extending from the back cover onto the front, but I actually don't mind it, especially when it's so perfectly aligned. Like this one seems like a great centered wrap. You see the same amount of white all along that left-hand edge. That actually doesn't bother me at all. I kind of like the look of that, but I know that some people prefer not to have the wrap come around to the front of the book. Now we're on to the Silver Age. So the fifth highest sale in the Silver Age was an Amazing Spider-Man #2 in an 8.0 grade, selling for $10,900. Nice looking colors on this book. It's a really well presenting book, so I don't know about the comparisons yet. We'll look at the comparisons to previous sales just after I finish doing these top fives. But I think this is a great buy as long as the price was right. This is a great looking book. The fourth highest sale here in the Bronze Age was a Fantastic Four #1. This was actually a signed copy, so this 3.0 sold for $12,000. This was signed by Stan Lee, so this was a witnessed signature and a 3.0 signed on in 2013. But for the life of me, I can't find where the signature is. Maybe someone in the comments can help me out. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, but I don't see the signature at all. And I didn't see any notes about the signature either being on an interior page. It's not on the back cover either. Actually, now that I look at it more closely, I think I see like the very edge of the T and the S from Stan Lee's signature. This is typically where he'll sign on books, but you just can't see the signature like at all because it blends into the dark parts of this artwork on this page. So maybe in person you'll get to see it a little bit better, but yeah, really not a great signature on this book just based on the photos. The third highest sale here is a Journey into Mystery Annual #1. This is the first appearance of Hercules, and we have this in a 9.6 selling for $12,319. So here, Thor versus Hercules on the cover. So this is a good first appearance cover. You get the first appearance character like prominently displayed on the cover, which you don't always see. So this is, a good cover for Hercules collectors. The second highest sale is an X-Men #1. This is a 6.0 selling for $15,250. Nice looking book. No noticeable Marvel chipping along the edges here. A little bit of damage. Pretty clean looking cover. The colors aren't the best. Not a lot of flaws on this book that are very obvious, so a nice looking copy. And finally, our #1 sale in the Silver Age, as is often the case, Amazing Fantasy #15, this time in a 3.5 selling for $32,000. That doesn't sound like a huge price, but if we look at the comparable sales, which we will do later, it is a little bit higher than the last sale, so still holding its value here. It doesn't seem to be dropping or increasing too much lately. This is, again, a nice presenting book. Again, you see not a lot of Marvel chipping here along the edge. Marvel chipping from that time period, it was common for the blade that was cutting the pages to actually tear and leave like a frayed edge or little pieces out along the edge of the book. So you'd see a lot of books from this time period that have that chipping out. Here, this is like a nice straight edge, a straight cut. So a nice looking copy of this Amazing Fantasy 15. Our last set of books here is the Golden Age. So the fifth highest sale in the Golden Age was a Strange Worlds #1 in a 9.4. You see this is the highest graded. It's 1 of 4, and it sold for $4,069. This is a book I was interested in bidding on. The Strange Worlds run, I think, it's a collectible run because the covers are fairly consistent in terms of their like artistic style and their appeal. There's some good girl art to the content, and it's a shorter run, so there's not a lot of issues to collect. So a high grade version of this book, they don't come up that often, so I was interested, but I wasn't able to buy this one. I've been buying a few too many books lately, so this one kind of slipped by, but a good copy of this book and a strong sale, just over $4,000. Marvel Mystery Comics #50 is our fourth highest sale. So this is a Schomburg World War II bondage cover. It sold for $4,164. This is a 6.0 copy. This one is interesting. It's in that wartime period, but having the monster be the villain is something that was common during the World War II covers. It wasn't always human figures dressed in Nazi or enemy regalia. Sometimes they would put hooded figures or monsters that were representing the villains in the war. So this is one of those examples. Third highest sale in the Golden Age is a Detective Comics #140. Only a 2.0, but this sold for $5,505. This is the first appearance of the Riddler. A lot of the Batman villains, some of the Golden Age appearances are very expensive. Obviously, this one only a 2.0 selling for $5,000. So a lot of times people will collect the Silver Age reintroduction of the Batman villains. But this is the true original and first appearance of the Riddler in a 2.0 selling for $5,500. Now, the second highest sale is a Wonder Woman #9. This was for $7,123. This Wonder Woman #9 was in a 9.2, first appearance of Giganta, and nice looking book. A 9.2, certainly hard to get in these Golden Age books, so a nice high grade there. And lastly, the highest selling Golden Age book was actually Captain America Comics #1. but you might not recognize it because this is a coverless example selling for $11,000. It's certainly the cheapest way that you'd be able to get a mostly complete Captain America #1. So the cover is missing, also the first and second wrap, and centerfold is missing. So a lot of the pieces missing here. There's also some married pages that are part of this book. But the real unique factor here is that it was autographed by Joe Simon. So I don't think there are a lot of Joe Simon autographed copies. This one was signed by Joe in 2010. I'm not sure what page this actually is in the book because, like I said, the cover was missing and also the first couple of wraps. So this is somewhere in the interior pages, but a lot of the book missing, no grade, and still $11,000 for this book. Okay, now that we've gone through the top 5 in each of these categories, here's looking at all of that data in one table and comparing to recent prices. So in the modern category, I mentioned Wolverine Limited #1. That price has gone down quite a bit over the most recent sale, which was $11,000. But even earlier in 2024, there were sales around $15,000. So that book has continued to slide. It looks like close to 50% value decline in just the last few months in 2024. The Amazing Spider-Man 300 and Spawn 1 comparisons we did kind of as we went through the top 5. This looks like a low sale for a Stan Lee signature ASM 300. And Spawn 1, it looks like a high sale compared to that most recent $1,600 sale, but that $1,600 sale seemed like a low outlier. The 3,500 does seem a little more average for this particular book. In the Bronze Age, Giant Size X-Men 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 129, both selling for a little bit lower than their most recent sale, but within the range of sales that I've seen in the past couple of months, so nothing too surprising there. Interesting to see the Batman 251 selling for a higher price than it sold for in 2023. So I think this is setting a new record for Batman number 251. Yeah, so it looks like it's a new record for this 251, at least in terms of the recorded sales in GPA. The highest price previously had been a $33,000 sale from April of last year. And this ComicLink sale selling for $38,000, that would be a new all-time record. But again, that won't be pulled into the GPA history. So we're only going to see that in the recordings of these, capturing it in these YouTube videos, but it won't be there in the GPA statistics when we look those up going forward. In the Silver Age, most of these books are selling for pretty similar prices compared to their recent sales in the last couple of months. The one thing that does stand out is this Journey into Mystery Annual #1, which sold for almost half the value that it sold for in 2023. March of last year, it's selling for $26,400. Now selling for just over $12,000. That's a huge drop in just over 15, 16 months. These Golden Age sales, it's always harder to do the comparisons. Really aren't enough books for these to be selling on a frequent basis to do recent comparisons over just the last few months. You can see some of these most recent sales in grade are from 2019, 2017, 2012. The Captain America Comics #1, that most recent sale, that was not a signed copy, but it was an incomplete coverless copy. So the best comparison that I could find, which sold for $14,400 in November of last year. Now this copy selling for $11,000 was also coverless and incomplete, but had the Joe Simon signature. So missing a few pages, probably more pages than that other incomplete sale. But with the Joe Simon signature, maybe it was a good buy. Strange Worlds #1, which was the 9.4 that I was probably most interested in out of the books that were in this particular auction, selling for just over $4,000 compared to the sale from 2012, which was almost $3,000. Going up in price by only $1,000 in over 10 years. Not a bad price. So I think it was probably still a decent buy for this buyer. I just wasn't ready to spend that money in this auction, but probably a decent purchase. Okay, so those were all of the top sales, but I do want to talk about the sales by title. This is all of the sales in all of the auction data that I collected. So Session 1, 1A, 1B, and Session 2. The most selling title was Amazing Spider-Man, then Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four. In the modern age, there aren't a lot of runs being sold. Amazing Spider-Man was the only title that had 5 or more different issues for sale in this auction. So the average selling price of those was $475. In the Bronze Age, however, a lot more runs. The highest selling run was Wonder Woman, which had 5 sales for an average of $650 per sale. The biggest sales in the Silver Age titles were in the Silver Surfer run, with an average selling price of $475. Hawkman actually came in number 2, with an average selling price of $438 out of its 8 sales. And then in third place was Amazing Spider-Man, selling for an average of $405. 155 Silver Age ASM books were sold in this auction for an average price of $405. And in the Golden Age, the biggest sales came out of All-Star Comics and Adventure Comics. Only 5 issues were sold in each title, but an average of just over $800 for All-Star Comics and Adventure Comics in this auction. All-Star Comics having the highest sales in the Golden Age. We'll take a look at some of the issues that were for sale here. There were 5 books being sold in this auction from the Golden Age. The first one was All-Star Comics number 38. This was the first Black Canary in the Justice Society of America. So this was a 7.0, which sold for $813. There was also an All-Star Comics 32 and an 8.0 selling for $1,200. An All-Star Comics 30 and a 7.5. This was selling for $1,203. All-Star Comics number 25 sold for $500. This was a 5.5. And then the earliest issue was All-Star Comics number 16, selling for $653. This was only a 4.5 grade. Thanks for joining me in reviewing this ComicLink auction data. This was the data from June 2024. I'll be back next month with more ComicLink data, and I will review probably Heritage auction data and maybe Comic Connect auction data in the future. So look for those videos as well. Please like the video if you like this kind of data analysis and presentation. Subscribe to the channel so that you can see more videos like this in the future. And share the videos with others who you think might be interested in these kinds of auction results and data analysis. Any comments you have on these videos or topics that you think would be interesting for me to look at more detail, I appreciate hearing from you in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.